What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and as you may have noticed by the appearance of this video, I'm going to do something a little bit different with this review and with future reviews. I did a podcast episode with my good buddy Josh Gofton where we talk about Quentin Tarantino's entire filmography, and once we got to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, about the golden age of Hollywood, we started talking about what was so special and unique about the golden age that's not really reflected on in today's standards. You can definitely say that modern movies have improved on some cultural merits as opposed to the old days, which really goes without saying, but that's not really what we were upset about. We were upset about the fact that the golden age of Hollywood was a very had just as many genres as you could possibly get. There were as many comedies as there were dramas, wars, westerns, musicals, and nowadays people complain about the overabundance of superhero movies, how it kind of overshadows other genres, other filmmakers, which, rightful complaints nonetheless. There are a lot of people who say that there isn't any originality as there were before, but they don't go and search for older movies. They just sit there and they ask for newer movies to be different and old fashioned, as opposed to going and supporting older content and saying, see, this is how you do it. And I felt like with all the free time that I have on my hands, I can devote myself to watching older forms of cinema, seeing what holds up, what doesn't, and saying, this is what made cinema so great. This is what influenced the filmmakers today. Let's respect that so we can improve upon filmmaking as an art form. And I was so amazed by the first movie that I started off with that I felt the need to discuss it right away. So, in this video, I'm here to let you know that Being There is no perfect movie. And Being There is about a middle-aged man named Chance, played by Peter Sellers. He's lived his entire life in this one house. He has never went outside. He never had a formal education. No one even taught him how to do basic chores like cook and clean for himself. The only things he knows how to do is tend to a garden because ever since he was a kid, he worked as the house's gardener and just watch TV and hopefully learn a few social cues and certain phrases from TV here and there when he's not just enjoying it purely just based on what he's watching. So yeah, all he is a simple-minded gardener who's addicted to TV until he's forced to move out when the homeowner dies. And for various circumstances, he finds himself best friends with very powerful political figures who mistake his simple-minded thoughts and feelings about gardening as thought-provoking metaphors for how the world is and how it maybe should be. This is a really tough movie to sum up because I do recognize that a lot of people don't think this movie has aged well. If anything, they think it's predicted the future in regards to the Trump era where a dumb white person is considered a genius by other dumb white people. And you know what? That's totally fine. Because there's an entire scene that flat out tells you the truth, that you can be a white person and get fucking anything for it, no matter how stupid you are. There are scenes that flat out say it about our central character. This movie understands the flaws of the characters that they're portraying. This is a movie where the majority of the characters are implied, it's not confirmed, but I think it's a safe guess anyways, that they are conservative Republicans who are very, very devoted to their beliefs. And what's interesting is this is written and directed by liberals. The director, Hal Ashby, was as pacifist, as vegetarian of a hippie as you could possibly get. Jerry Kaczynski, who wrote the movie, also wrote the original novel too. But I'm getting off track here. It's a movie written by liberals that makes fun of conservatism and makes fun of the media. But it doesn't make fun of conservative people. We have gotten to a point where human beings nowadays accept others based on their similar beliefs. And if their different beliefs are just that polar opposite from each other, you are instantly shunned. People nowadays judge each other based on their race, their sexuality, their gender, their political beliefs. And being so stubbornly devoted to your own beliefs and being so close-minded to anything that's different is definitely what's keeping us divided right now. And you know what? In 1979, when this movie was made, people judge each other by their race, their sexuality, their gender, their political beliefs, and they are so stubbornly devoted to those beliefs that they are so willing to keep the division, keep people divided. This movie doesn't say we've lost our way and we're going backwards. This movie is saying that we are just standing still and we're not making any progressions. The best quote in this entire movie is from Melvin Douglas, as the one Republican who you can definitely identify with the most. He says at the very end, "I don't regret having beliefs that kept me away from people I respect, but I do regret that these beliefs kept me away from them." This is a movie that is about addressing the flaws of other people, accepting the differences that other people have, and focusing more on the positives, on the things that we all have in common, because that is how we are going to progress in life. That is how we are going to move forward and deal with the pain that we have in our lives. And I think what makes Chance such a unique and interesting character is that even though he doesn't really know what he's talking about when he's speaking to anyone in this movie, really, because he has no preconceived notions about the world, it makes everything that he says, whether he means it or not, seem so genuine and honest, but still in a polite and sophisticated manner. And you definitely believe that all the characters who speak to him believe that he's speaking out of genuine care. And you come to believe over the course of the movie, where he starts off not knowing anything about the world, therefore not really caring, to a person who doesn't really understand the emotions he's feeling, but we can see in his eyes that he is feeling them, that he is starting to change as a person. But because he doesn't have any preconceived notions of the world before him, the ending does kind of imply that other powerful people that he's become friends with may one day take advantage of him, because since he has no past that they can discover of him, there are no flaws that can be revealed about him that could ruin his reputation. But that's just another point that this movie is trying to prove, how we look at past mistakes defining people, not them currently. This movie deliberately leaves every single character without a permanent backstory. All the assumptions that they make about themselves and about each other as people, we are doing the exact same thing along the way. We can only make assumptions about these characters and judge them based on their strengths and weaknesses. And over the course of the movie, just like them, we as an audience accept the fact that they are flaws. We accept the fact that we disagree with their logic. But we come to accept them as people because they are human beings, and that they surprisingly do have stuff in common with us. It just so happens those things in common are stuff we don't see in the media. It's things that only happen in personal and private lives that we can never judge for ourselves. Whew. My hands are shaking. This is probably the most nervous I've ever been making a review, which I don't even like getting political about really anything, because I can't dictate what you're going to think. Only you as a person can decide how your feelings for the world are, how your feelings of what's going on right now. Those are going to be entirely up to you. I can't force you to make your own choices, just like you can't force me to make my own. Do I agree that the world is a racist place and that we can only fix it by speaking up? Absolutely, and we should. However, the definition of speaking up is so subjective nowadays that it's the reason I'm not saying anything right now, because people, no matter what I say, are going to think you're wrong because it's not my way. I've got news for you guys. Your way is not the only way. And that's yet another great lesson that being there teaches about us as people. It teaches us that no matter what, there's always going to be people that we disagree with. And the most we can do is try to reach out to them peacefully and come up with a compromise. And anyone who finds anything I say in this review completely disrespectful or wrong just because you don't like it, I have 2 words for you. Oh well. Now, anyways, back onto the production aspects of the movie, because they are just as good in my opinion. I don't think Peter Sellers has ever been better than he is as Chance the Gardener. He starts off as a person who, at first glance, whether he knows any better or not, can be a pretty unlikable person, because no one taught him how to read or write or how to cook or clean for himself. He does come across as a very childish and lazy person that at first I was just sitting there going, how can I get behind this guy at all? And then once he comes across these rich people and they start treating him with respect just based on his appearances, his more positive traits begin to become out in the open. He actually is a very polite and sophisticated person who speaks to everyone with dignity and respect, but also this soft spoken, blunt honesty, no matter what any other person feels towards him or speaks to him. You could call him a complete and utter asshole to him, and he would speak to you the exact same way that he would to his friends. He would be compassionate, but he would also be very straightforward with you about how he feels. What I also love is that he's not a fish out of water character who flat out blurts out everything that's on his mind that leads to a lot of awkward, uncomfortable situations. In fact, because he is a fish out of water character, there are a lot of moments where he's just sitting there silently thinking, what is happening right now? What am I going to say? And this is probably the most visual performance that Sellers has ever given in his entire career. I say a lot of times in my videos that you can judge an actor's performance just based on their facial expressions and their body language. And what's great about the stuff that he does visually and physically is that he portrays a lot of subtle differences that make you genuinely believe that he's learning about the world and learning about himself as a person without having to rely on the TV to do it. Because at the beginning of the movie, when the homeowner dies, he really doesn't have any reactions to it whatsoever. And at first you think that he's just a dick who doesn't care about anybody but himself. But then as the movie goes on, as he builds friendships with other people, and when one of those friends becomes gravely ill, even though he looks the exact same at the beginning when his homeowner died, when he sees his friend in pain, his face looks the exact same, but his eyes are red, he's crying, he's actually making eye contact with other people. Really subtle differences like that that make you genuinely believe that he is actually learning about how to be a good person. And part of learning how to be a good person is to see how other people in life react based on whatever you say. Melvin Douglas especially really surprised me as the one rich, powerful figure that you understand the most, because it's really his character that makes you realize that every conservative that you see on the news, they have personal private lives that we know absolutely nothing about and we can only leave up to imagination. But in this movie, we actually get a glimpse into his personal private life, and you genuinely believe that despite the fact that he has absolutely everything, there are things about life that really bug him. He really does hate the fact that people are torn apart by their ideologies, by their differences. He genuinely wants people to come together peacefully, or at least come to a compromise as nicely as possible. And you genuinely believe that through this father-son bond that he builds with Chance based on just how frequently he misinterprets Chance's thoughts and feelings about gardening. I'm so nervous I actually just swallowed the ice cube in my drink. Wow. The same way that Chance's facial expressions become more subtle over time as he begins to build genuine bonds with people, it is the strongest between him and Melvin Douglas, because Douglas also has a few changes of his own in terms of his vocal range and his line delivery. He's very gruff. He has a very gruff voice at the beginning of the movie where he's going on about the things that he's struggling with, things that he's afraid of other people noticing. There are many times where he is so sick that he can't walk, but when he has to meet his superiors and his comrades, he does everything he can to stand up to show that deep down inside he actually still has power within them, even though in reality that power is slowly fading away. So you genuinely believe that all of these powerful figures that you see in the media and assume have no weaknesses whatsoever, it's really just a facade. And it's a facade because he knows for a fact that other people are going to criticize him as weak for it, which he doesn't want, I don't want, because him being in a wheelchair, that's not really my biggest concern. I'm getting so sidetracked in this video. I don't think I've ever been this sidetracked in my entire life. It's insane. But anyways, as I was saying, Melvin Douglas starts off with such a gruff vocal exterior when he's expressing how he feels the world has lost its way when he's talking to Chance. But as Chance maintains his positive outlook towards life, Douglas is so touched by that. You can really feel it without him saying so, because he becomes a lot more soft spoken. He starts treating his servants and his doctors with a lot more respect, as opposed to just a lot of sarcastic quips that he uses at the very beginning. And you can tell that it's touching the other servants because they discover who Chance really is, and some of them are really stuck with admitting the truth to him and breaking his heart, or leaving him as a peaceful man to make sure that no one's at conflict with each other, that they respect this man's wishes of having the world be more about coming together, compromising, being peaceful, as opposed to revealing flaws about each other that just divide us and keep us divided. Shirley Maclaine is also really good too as Douglas's wife, although there are a lot of awkward jokes stemming from this relationship between her and Chance. That's my only way of putting it, because the things that she does in this movie to please Chance, because she also misinterprets everything he says, leads to some really awkward bits that are played up for laughs, which, if anyone's wondering if Peter Sellers does any of the Pink Panther slapstick that you would expect with a fish out of water character, the answer is yes and no. There are some times where he where he mistakes a TV clicker where it's actually a bed recliner, but the scenes like that only last for 5 or 10 seconds. They're not really meant to be laugh out loud hilarious. And if anyone's wondering if I think it's just as good of a comedy as it is a drama, the answer is no. I really saw it more as a drama. But you know what? When people label movies as comedy slash drama or dramedy, I just assume it's a drama, because those are the parts that really stick out in movies in that genre, for me anyways. But as I was saying before, Shirley MacLaine did give a good performance, and her character does have a lot of hidden pain that she has to address. And when Chance, as per usual, speaks to her with genuine thoughts and feelings, but also honest feelings, it does make her come out of her shell, and you genuinely believe that she has a really good arc. The comedic bits were just too awkward for me personally, and I thought they were a little desperate, especially a bedroom sequence that I didn't think needed to be in the movie at all. And the other problem I have with the movie is when other political figures are trying to discover Chance's background and discover any weaknesses they might be able to point out about him or to remove so that they can advance him more in terms of the political field. It's not that those things are bad, because the stuff they come up with, the fact that they cannot find a single thing about him, is funny in terms of the ideas, but in terms of the jokes that they're trying to set up and with these characters who are doing the investigative work, they're not really all that interesting compared to Sellers, Douglas, or MacLaine. They're just boring individuals. And before I forget, Hal Ashby does a lot of really seamless directing techniques that are more concerned with the performances and the writing as opposed to having a visual style. There still is a visual style, but it's actually very mundane. He likes to put all of his actors in one single frame so that your eyes can look back and forth between every character when they speak. He knows for a fact that anyone watching a movie is paying closer attention to the person that's talking. And sometimes there are some shots where it's just one character in the shot, someone else is talking, but you're so focused on the person in the frame and how they're reacting to the shots in terms of their facial expressions. A lot of filmmakers nowadays would just cut back and forth as if we were completely lazy, like we couldn't look back and forth between actors or raise up the stakes and tension as the scene gets more dramatic or as the scene gets funnier. Ashby and filmmakers like that in the 70s really understood that casual audiences were much smarter than we give them credit for. And overall, I think that's just the great thing about being there, why I think it's probably one of the most impactful movies that I have ever seen. Hal Ashby, Jerry Kaczynski, Peter Sellers, Melvin Douglas, Shirley MacLaine, they all trust you with the subject matter, and they trust you to pay attention to what's happening on screen. They trust that you understand that no character has a full-fledged backstory, so you're only making assumptions about them nothing definitively proven, not even about Chance. Even though he's the most fleshed out character, there's stuff about his backstory left up to interpretation. So as soon as I'm grading the movie, I'm actually going to give my own interpretation as to who I think Chance is as a person, especially based on the final shot, which I absolutely loved. But yeah, it's very risky, but also very heartfelt in regards to its themes and messages, which are explained in subtle detail, in such perfect detail. The performances are all really top notch. Peter Sellers should have gotten that Oscar over Dustin Hoffman. I'm glad Melvin Douglas got his Oscar for it. Shirley Maclaine could have been given better material, but I think she still makes the most with what she's given. Hal Ashby, subtle direction, perfect direction. Kaczynski, writing the novel and writing the script, his messages are all there. And the messages are the fucking best thing about this movie. And I encourage you, seek this movie out. If you have HBO Max and it's on there, if you're in Canada like me and you have Crave, find Being There, watch Being There, pay really close attention to what's happening on screen. And I genuinely believe that it will really strike a chord with you, because all the people I asked before who said it was a great movie, they knew it was a great movie without even having to watch the news. And I think that's really important. Even no matter what time period you watch this movie in, the messages are just great messages on their own. And for all those reasons, I'm going to give Being There a 4.5 out of 5. Okay, so as promised, I'm going to give my own theory on Chance's backstory, because a lot of it really is left up to interpretation. And this is probably going to shock and maybe disappoint a lot of people, because Peter Sellers has played a lot of incorrect characters based on their ethnicities, and I don't condone any of them personally. In fact, most of them I've never even seen, and even the ones I have, racist or not, they just weren't funny. But anyways, my theory is Chance is a biracial child who had a black mother, but he was left with his white father, the old man who we never see except for his corpse. And I think he was kept in this house, never allowed to leave outside, because I think this white father would have been ashamed of his son just for being different, just because he was probably ashamed of the mother of the child just for being a black woman and nothing else. And a lot of people are going to say, well, if he didn't want to have the child, why not put him in an orphanage? Why not kick the mother and the child out onto the streets? The answer is, if he is that selfish and that racist of a white person, doing all of that leaves a paper trail, leaves records that can be traced back to him, can be used in the media against him. So in terms of keeping this child in this house where no one else will recognize what's going on, makes him completely spotless in regards to keeping such a huge secret. And some might say, well, what about Louise? How come she didn't say anything? Chances are she probably didn't know. She probably just thought that Chance was another privileged white guy who got everything he wanted just because he was a privileged individual. And some might even say, well, if that's such an important detail about him as a person, why not just flat out say that? And I think part of the other reason that they wouldn't have explained that or just flat out said it, if that is a proven theory, because chances are this could be a wrong theory, is that they're trying to say it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a person of color, if you're gay, if you have different political beliefs from the majority. Those things don't matter. The things that matter are, who are you as a person? How do you treat other people? Do you treat them with respect and compassion, or do you just alienate people just because of their differences? I think that's the reason why, if this theory is the case, I think that's the reason why they don't flat out say it. They want you to discover it for yourselves. They want you to think about, if that is a proven theory, what does that mean to you? What do these people mean to you? It really just comes down to how you feel about this movie, and that's really about it. I can't force you to love this movie, just like you can't force me to take back anything I say if you don't like it, and yeah, that's all she wrote. So Guys, thank you as always for watching this review. I highly recommend you check out Being There. Here and there, I'm probably going to put more 2019 reviews. There won't be as many as I promised before because I just got so struck with the idea of reviewing classical older movies. So be sure to stay tuned for more content. Be sure to let me know how you feel about Being There in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.